My father humiliated me at my engagement party. I destroyed his podcast empire. My father built his entire brand on being an alpha visionary. Seminars, self-help books, endless posturing. At home, my childhood was his raw data. If I failed, he repackaged it as a keynote on weakness. I learned early that my humiliation was his favorite currency. When I got engaged, my fiance's family hosted a lavish dinner at their yacht club. I showed up exhausted but hopeful, trying to be a normal groom. My father arrived in a tailored velvet jacket, dominating conversations like he was charging for admission. Halfway through the salmon course, he seized the microphone for a toast nobody authorized. He smirked at me. I'm stunned he found a woman willing to merge with such a depreciating asset, he boomed. Then he launched into the story of my failed tech startup from my early 20s. Not a vague anecdote, a full corporate autopsy. He mocked my naive projections, acted out my panic attacks, and reenacted me begging for a bridge loan. Silverware clattered against porcelain. My fiance's father covered his mouth. My fiancé stared at me like I was a stranger. My father finished with, "Always cut your losses," and sat down like a conqueror. Nobody clapped. They just stared. People stood up in awkward clusters and abandoned our table. My future father-in-law walked directly out to the marina. I sat there burning while my dad grinned like he'd closed $1 million deal. After that, her family froze me out. My fiancé almost canceled the caterers. We endured months of agonizing therapy. My father never apologized. Vulnerability drives engagement, he sneered, like it was a legal defense. Then he started treating my wedding like his next summit. He bought a custom white tuxedo. He demanded a 30-minute speaking slot. That's when the real bombshell dropped. I stopped arguing and started planning. A week before the wedding, I invited his primary sponsors and podcast network executives to my loft. I called it an intimate pre-wedding mastermind. He was ecstatic. He dragged 15 high-net-worth investors into my living room like an entourage. I announced we were doing a transparent, lessons-learned exercise. My father practically salivated. He went first, of course, mining my teenage insecurities like an open quarry. The executives chuckled nervously, only knowing the polished fraud he sold them. Then he leaned back, swirling his bourbon. "Your turn, kid." I didn't yell. I didn't smile. He'd climbed my neck, but my voice was absolute ice. I started with his actual balance sheet. The 3 shell companies he bankrupted in the 90s. The offshore accounts he used to hide assets from my mother's oncology nurses. I talked about the nights he vanished, leaving eviction notices taped to my door, and the $200,000 college trust he secretly drained to fund his first book tour. "You're twisting the narrative," he hissed, his velvet jacket suddenly looking suffocating. "No, I'm reading the bank ledgers," I whispered, dropping a thick stack of audited financials onto the glass table. Slow motion. The lead sponsor set his bourbon down violently. An executive stood up, refusing to make eye contact. A tech founder grabbed his coat like the room was infected. Chair legs scraped the hardwood. The front door clicked shut. No one asked questions. My dad tried his booming laugh. It cracked into a pathetic wheeze. "Slander," he croaked, but his hands were trembling uncontrollably. In 3 minutes, the loft emptied. He looked small for the first time in my life. "Why would you do this to my network?" he snapped. "Because you did it to my family first," I replied. He cried real tears, mourning his lost revenue, not his son. He tried to run damage control. He called my fiancé. "He's having a paranoid breakdown," he pleaded over the phone. "You need to lock him up." Of course he did. That's his reflex. But I had already showed her the ledgers. She didn't flinch. She just went dead quiet and said, "We are done being your audience." We set the boundaries in titanium. No mic, no white tux, no alcohol. One wrong move, and the off-duty cops drag him out. The wedding arrived. My father sat in the 3rd row in a cheap gray suit, flanked by 2 security guards like a prisoner. He stayed entirely silent. The day was finally mine. I didn't feel victorious about the loft. I just felt clean. He taught me vulnerability drives engagement. I just taught him the part he always omitted. Fraud drives bankruptcy.